Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. All right, Nick Wright's about to stop in, and I guess we'll have to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs going to the Super Bowl again. But before we start and talk with Nick, let's talk about the Game Time app. Grab your smartphone. Download the Game Time app. Like all apps, takes less than 90 seconds. If you want to bet on one of these football games, if you want to go to one of these football games, download Game Time. Use the code Colin, C-O-L-I-N, $20 if you put in Colin off your first purchase on the Game Time app. It's fast and easy. It's a fast and easy way to buy tickets to games, concerts, theater, and comedy shows. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the game, and in fact, an hour after it begins. How about that? And if you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. The code is Colin, C-O-L-I-N, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, Nick Wright, we do this on Tuesdays. It comes out on Wednesdays. We do close to an hour. We talk about a lot of stuff we don't normally talk about, on the show, which I like. Nick has I can see an updated lighting scenario set up here for the podcast. Sometimes it's got
sometimes I forget to clean the camera lens. Sometimes it looks like I'm in a submarine. Sometimes I'm trying to show off my wife's beautiful interior design because, as we've discussed, we're both married to kind of different types of artists. But then I'm told there's glare of lights and everything, so I figured I should probably just go ahead and get a real setup. So, yeah, hopefully this is better for the viewers because, as everyone knows, when people are like, hey, I want to hear Nick Wright and Colin Cowherd talk, it's because they like looking at us. Like, that's going to be the thing that really puts this over the top is the aesthetic. I'm happy to do it. I'm delighted to do it today. We can talk anything you want. As we always do, but kind of where my head is.
So I was saying this today on the show, and I touched on it briefly after I had you on.
When you interviewed Tom Brady?
Yes.
Right after you had me on.
First time you've ever batted third on my baseball
I know.
team.
I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, hell of a leadoff, but go ahead. Sorry.
We had to move you up the order a little bit.
Yeah, exactly right.
I was saying this, that we judge coaches on a different scale. Matt LaFleur goes 9-8, and I think universally we look at it and think that was a hell of a coaching job. It's the youngest team to make the playoffs since the 70 Bills. And I said this with Jim Harbaugh. Let's consider everything. You're in a distracted market that you're literally lost, and you just came from San Diego where you played in a soccer stadium for 2 years. So what is success for Harbaugh? And I said today, there's a very real possibility over the next 5 years that to get to the Super Bowl, he'd have to face Mahomes and Reed 3 times.
Yeah.
And beat him in the last one.
Right.
It'd be nice to at least beat him once in the first two. But that if he won a division title twice in 5 years, and he never got to a Super Bowl, but lost thrilling games, it was Mahomes, Herbert, Harbaugh 3 times in 6 years, I would judge that absolutely as a successful Charger run. That Phil Mickelson's great. He would have had 12 more majors without Tiger Woods. The Utah Jazz teams were actually really, really good. You know very well the Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
Things are shortened when you've got Magic, Tiger, MJ, LeBron. How many people did LeBron keep out of the finals in the East? And that Harbaugh and Herbert have to be judged on a scale of, you got Tiger Woods in his prime here.
So, which is why I thought it was maybe an odd job to take. I understand your point, and it's the right point, which is it was the only job available with a great quarterback. But let's talk about, if the goal is to get to the Super Bowl, you probably have to go 2 out of 3 in a season against Mahomes. Because if you lose both in the regular season, you don't win the division. Very, very hard to get swept by the Chiefs and go 0-2 in the regular season, but then win the division. Like, how's that going to happen? So you've got to at least split in the regular season. So when you play in the playoffs, it's in your building. And that's the other sneaky tough thing about the Chargers is it's 8 or 9 road games and then 8 or 9 neutral site games. Like, they're not going to have a huge home field advantage, which is a really, really rough position to be in. And so I wouldn't necessarily hold it against them. This is why people are wondering why it was so quickly the Chiefs went to somewhat hated. In some circles, so hated that some of the dumbest people in America think the tale as old as time of super popular celebrity female dating superstar athlete is a psyop by the CIA to help get Biden reelected. Like, man, we got Giselle and Tom over on him. Let's try it again. They didn't know when it was Mickey Mantle and, oh my goodness, the most famous woman ever to live.
Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe. We tricked them then. Let's try it. Run it back one more time. Like, give me a break. I think one of the reasons I don't think people are so sick of the Chiefs. I think they're so sick of the Patriots right into the Chiefs.
Yeah.
So the Patriots dynasty was 20 years. And then they played the Chiefs in an AFC title game, handed them the baton, and now the Chiefs thing has started. So in the AFC, Colin, 2011 to now, there have been 13 AFC title games. All right. So 26 teams could have played in it. 14 of the 26 are the Chiefs and the Patriots. There have been, in the last 13 years, the 13 Super Bowls from the AFC. 5 were Tom Brady, 4 were Patrick Mahomes, 2 Peyton Manning, and then Flacco once and Burrow once. So if you're in the AFC, you're like, you've got to be kidding me. Yeah. Like, the Patriot thing just ended, and now this thing is going on, and it just feels like you have so many. If you're in the NFC, Matt Ryan gets to a Super Bowl. Kurt Warner as a Cardinal gets to Super Bowl. Cam gets to Super Bowl. Russell Wilson, there's almost a democracy there. In the AFC, it feels like, well, I didn't have Tom, Peyton, or Patrick. I'm drawing dead. And so, I do think that let me ask you this. Was Phillip Rivers' Chargers tenure successful? Do you think the fans felt it was? How did they feel?
Well, it was. I said this today. Do you think San Francisco's happy with Kyle Shanahan? They have no rings. Do you think the Dolphin fans were happy with Don Shula, whose last 22 years, 16 times, he didn't make the playoffs or was one and done, didn't win a playoff game. In 16 of the 22 years, he had Dan Marino. Do you think Don Shula is no, but he was facing other great teams in their prime. And so I just think you have to grade on different scales. This is why I don't take championships as the be all end all. Bill Russell had 11, Jordan 6. I mean, Dickie Simpkins had 3. I mean, we got to be honest about this stuff, is that the Utah Jazz were not a great team. They were a very good team. I don't think Jordan kept them from greatness. Why? Because Malone's an all-timer, Stockton is, and then it was kind of guys, right? Yep. Like, most of your great teams have 3, 4, 5, 6. And so, but there are times where I think Harbaugh and Herbert, we're going to have to look at it. And if they could get to a Super Bowl, that is a big effing hurdle in the AFC now.
Well, yeah. And I mean, that's right now, active starting quarterbacks who have been to a Super Bowl. Forget win it, been to it. I'm going to try to do it off the top of my head. Obviously, Mahomes. Jimmy Garoppolo is not a starter anymore. I don't know if Russell Wilson's a starter anymore. Like, he might not be. He's going to get cut. Rodgers, but he's at the end. So we're talking about in their prime. So Mahomes, Burrow, Stafford. There's an obvious one I'm forgetting. Purdy now, obviously. And the list is running short. You know what I mean? Like, it is just getting there is so incredibly difficult. That I agree with, which is why here's what I think does matter. I do think these guys who want to be Kevin Clark, who I know, you're pals with, he's been on your show. I think he's great. He said that there are guys, great players, whose entire NFL legacy and history is going to be thought of entirely differently just because Mahomes existed. The same way what Jordan did to a lot of people in the 90s, like we look at them as X when they should have been Y because of Mahomes. But it's also why it's so incumbent on those guys to not blow opportunities either when Mahomes trips up or before you get to him. So like Lamar's going to get killed in the short term because of this game, and that's fair. But he didn't lose to the Texans before he got the chance. You know what I mean? Like you lost to the champ. Like what I think is probably a tough one. That Wilds asked me this today off the air. Like which AFC team right now is the most like Jesus? Like watching the Chiefs doing what they're doing. And I said, I wonder if in a weird way it's Cincinnati. I wonder if Cincinnati's thinking, man, we beat him and then had a chance to win the Super Bowl, couldn't close it out. The next year had the ball, 90 seconds left, tie game, could have beaten him again and didn't close it out. And then the next year, when the Chiefs were super vulnerable, our guy gets hurt, we don't get a chance. And now the next time Burrow's on the field, maybe T. Higgins isn't there. Do the Bengals quietly right now think, man, our best chance is the one that we just had. And now we've got to kind of build it back up. The Bills thinking the same thing. Like the Ravens, in a weird way, I don't think they look at it this like a massive blown opportunity. I know it was, but they got beaten significantly. The Chargers, I think, are just saying, we would love an opportunity to have our hearts broken. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but we would love to be back playing in the games where there's an opportunity to have our hearts broken. And we look at Phillip Rivers as a fringe Hall of Famer. He made the conference title game one time because he had Brady, Peyton, and Big Ben to go through. Right. And that's hard, man. That's hard.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. We'll kind of pivot to this, the Taylor Swift thing where apparently MAGA is upset and people are upset with that. I did a rant today that made, it got a lot of play on, I guess. I don't see it, TikTok and some stuff like that, is that here's what's weird to me. I think about this a lot. How would my wife and my daughter and my stepdaughters judge me if I was bothered by 30 seconds of Taylor Swift in a broadcast that lasts 3.5 hours? Here's what I always wonder about men. They can't have strong women in their life. The fact that a man, if I went on the air and I was outraged by Taylor Swift, and I have a really bright daughter and bright stepdaughters and a smart, savvy, outspoken wife. I have a sister who doesn't really follow me, but she'll get stuff on Instagram or TikTok.
That's my sister too. Not that all interested in what I do, but sometimes gets sent to her. Yep.
Always the non-sports stuff.
Yeah.
But I always think about this. If you're a man and you have women in your life that you either love or respect, don't you have the self-awareness to know what an effing idiot and insecure D-bag you look like? Being bothered by 24 seconds of Taylor Swift shots from a box in a 3.5-hour broadcast?
All right, listen. Taylor Swift was shown almost to the second the same amount of time in the Chiefs-Ravens game as crab cakes were. So anyone pretending like, it was too much, they are projecting their own issues on it. And it is partially, yes, everything. Like it is hard to shock me these days at the things people will get mad about. But this is shocking.
Yeah.
If there was ever a feel-good story, it's, hey, this guy who I guess people don't like Travis because he did the commercials for Pfizer. Like, this is...
Nick, Shaquille O'Neal, and I know his agent, he's done 600 ads for if you ask, the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. He's doing it for the General. He's doing it
for
Bob
He's a tight end. They don't get commercials. He's at the end of his career, and people are going, hey, will you do it for $1.5 million? The answer is yes.
And also, by the way, even if... So here's why. All right, I'm going to be very honest here for a minute. I find a lot of some of the people angry about the vaccine stuff to be very intellectually dishonest, because if the stance is, like you have said, don't do mandates, my body, my choice, whatever it is, so be it. But that must then also mean if Travis Kelce's like, man, I love the fucking vaccine, I think it saved people's lives.
That's right.
And scream from the mountaintops. Good for him. Like, do whatever you want. But they hate him because of it. They hate Travis Kelce, and Aaron didn't help this situation, calling Mr. Pfizer, whatever. Taylor, like, shockingly, the vast majority of young pop stars throughout all of American history tends to lean liberal. Now, maybe she won't in her 60s, but there's not a bunch of super popular 20-something-year-old musicians in American history who's like, man, I'm a hardcore conservative. That is not what what the artistic fields typically are. So these two people coming together, and they just hate them. They just hate them. And I think they hate them because they're young, they're happy, they're good looking, they're successful, and they are jealous. Guess what? Everybody's probably a little jealous of Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. It's like, well, you got $1.5 billion between you. He's the best ever at this. You might be the best ever at that. Yeah. You do whatever you want. But there's a level of happy for you. Seems awesome. There used to be something of almost aspirational happiness on behalf of others. I feel like when people saw Brady and Giselle, there was an element of, goddamn, man, that's why you practice so hard in high school. Like, you might literally end up marrying a supermodel. Like, that. And I know that's kind of, no,
I get what you're saying.
School guy stuff, but that is part of it. Is like the prom queen and the jock athlete and all that stuff. And I can't conceptualize the people who hate these people. They get angry at it. And they're angry because Taylor Swift is shown. Jayson Kelce was shown more in one playoff game than Taylor's been shown in all of them. And I'm not talking about a playoff game he played in, but go ahead.
Well, years ago, one of the really interesting pieces of advice I got years ago, and this, I remember where I was. It was Las Vegas, and it was a warm day in the summer. And Don Logan was my boss, and I got hired at the baseball winter meetings. I'm like 22 years old, right out of college, 21, 22. And he had a big sales meeting to go to, and it was a big one with the president. They were trying to get some money from him to buy some billboards and season tickets. And so Don said, this is a big one. I'm going to do this myself. I was really young out of college. And he said, here's $20, go play poker. And so I sat next to a guy at the Union Plaza, and he looked like he was Texas. He had just sold radio or TV stations in Texas or Arkansas. And at the time, that he looked rich. He had a really nice watch. He deep tan, white shirt, good looking guy with a lot of hair. This is a guy that lived life. He was about probably 60, probably drank a little too much and had too much damn fun.
I without knowing what this guy looked like, I know exactly what he looked like.
And I don't know why I asked this, but I've done this with older men who I think are successful in over the course of my life. Don't do it anymore, but I did at the time because now I am an older man. But I asked people when I was in my 20s and early 30s. We started talking about stuff, and he told me about his life, and he was playing, and I'm just sitting there trying to twiddling my thumbs. I don't really play poker. And I said, this is a weird question, but if you could give me, you're a really successful guy, if you could give me one piece of advice, what would it be? And he said, celebrate other people's success, not just your own, to be a much happier person, and they'll remember it. And then the second thing he said, we talked after that. He said, now this is Nick, this is 40 years ago, close to it, 35 years ago. I remember the white shirt, the watch. I mean, I remember him. He said, go up, do a test. And he says, tell somebody you make $1 million a year. Now, at the time, that's nobody, except maybe a casino owner. And he said, their reaction will tell you if they will ever make 7 figures. If their reaction is, no, you don't. No, he goes, they'll never make it. If their reaction is, they lean in. How'd you do it? Tell me more. He goes, you're looking at a millionaire. Surround yourself with people that want to be on that journey. And so my point is the people bothered by Travis Kelce, Giselle, Tom, Taylor Swift, those aren't successful people. They resent success. People that want to be on this journey and they just love, doesn't matter what you do. You don't have to be rich, but you love the journey. You love other people. You're happy. They're not the ones outraged by this.
So I agree with you to a degree. I think you're right that the people who didn't like Tom and Giselle and now don't like Taylor and Travis, those people resent success. My fear is that there are a different group of people, maybe with some crossover, who were not bothered at all previously by Tom and Giselle, but now have gotten so
political,
tribalist, yes,
yeah,
that if I know affirmatively you are on the other political team as me,
yes, that's true.
I hate you. I actively hate you. And that is, it's like, man, I get it. I don't get the hate, but I understand if you feel someone is constantly preaching their politics, even if you agree with them, you can be like, man, it's a bummer. You know what I mean? I'm not here for it, all of it. But I don't look at Travis doing the commercials as preaching politics at all. Taylor, once every election cycle, I think sends out a link about like registering to vote. And I think she endorsed Obama, I think like 8 years ago. That's it. If that level of like, I'll give you an example. If I had the opportunity to sit down with Bill Belichick, I'd pay money for it. If I could sit down and like pick his brain, talk to him, whatever it is, he doesn't preach his politics. He's at the very least buddies with Trump. I'm pretty sure like I think that's where he aligns politically. I know conservative, and I think he's a Trump guy. Knowing that doesn't make me be like, man, I hope he never gets Shula's record. I hope he's unemployed forever. Like, it's like, okay, we wouldn't talk about those things. And there is just a level of anger toward, and not only anger, but also what I think has to be intentional stupidity. The idea that important, influential people, including people who up until a few weeks ago were running for president, were on the debate stage, was like, oh, Fix is in for Kansas City, and it's all a way to help Biden get reelected. I'm like, man, Colin, on my drive into, and we laugh at it, all right? On my drive into work Monday, the games were Sunday. Drive into work Monday. The guy driving that I'm riding with him says to me, he's like, hey, you're in sports, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, man, what do you think about all this talk about the NFL being fixed? And I'm like, huh? And he's like, yeah, man, it's all over the internet. Yeah. He's like that. And that moment kind of gave me pause, because I'm like, this guy clearly like was not a big sports fan. Just, you know what I mean? Is youngish guy who's just like, man, it seems like a lot of people are saying the games are fixed. And so we can laugh at the absurdity of it, but then you wonder how many people see it and like, yep, I buy that.
Well,
this whole relationship's a sham, and it's to help Joe Biden get elected.
Like, does it feel like it's gotten worse over the last 5 years? The answer, of course, is yes. Here's what I would theorize. Because over the last 5 to 7 years, the best media has gone behind a paywall. And people, like streaming services, have a limit on paywalls. So I have about 25 services, newspapers, magazines, The Athletic, 25. And I can write it off. It's my business. But so what is free? Twitter, the internet. So it is this huge group of people in America who just are tired of, they go get their information from the internet.
It is and listen, I went to Newhouse. Journalism was my major. This is something I don't consider myself a journalist, right? In what I do right now. I feel like when people ask me, are you a journalist? I say, no, they're like, you have a journalism degree. And I say, I feel the same way as like, I'm not a cyclist. I know how to ride a bicycle, but I wouldn't call myself a cyclist. I can do it, but it's not what I currently do is, give opinions and smoke fake cigars and do silly bits. You know what I mean? Like I do but I think journalism's super important. Super important.
Yeah.
And I think the death of the local news, local journalism is the wide-ranging impacts of that, and the fact that the lack of faith, and some of this is well-earned and some of this is bad actors kind of seizing on it, that people have in authoritative sources and information and all of it to go along with the disintegration of local news is like a real crisis point in America. And this will never happen, so it's just pie in the sky. But I would fully support if you could get and you could make sure it was as bipartisan people from every political stripe imaginable being involved in the process of it, making sure it's true news, not opinion, just information, in having what they have in other countries, which is some public funding for, hey, here's what's going on. And I understand. Yes, the BBC works. I understand what people hear from that. They're like, oh, state-controlled media. And right, which is, it's the well has been spoiled here too much to ever let that happen. But something to where it was true news, not opinion, not anything. Because what I don't think people, when we talk about like the biggest stories, like, and maybe you and I have talked about this before, so I apologize if I'm in reruns and we move on. Like Watergate will get broken no matter what. The White House will be covered no matter what. But if you don't have a local newspaper, there's no one at the local courthouse.
That's right.
There's no way, by the way, subscriber-based journalism, paid journalism is worth having a court reporter. Someone go to the water board meetings. Someone go to the school, city council, those things in small towns. And that's where the corruption starts from the slowest level. And if all of a sudden you're in a you don't have to be a tiny town, just a medium-sized city, smaller than average town, and you're a judge that wants to be corrupt as hell on the take, and you're like, there hasn't been a reporter in my courtroom in 6 weeks. Well, guess what? Do whatever the fuck I want to do. You know what I mean? And so that is that.
And that could be liberal, conservative. It could be anybody.
Oh, 100%. The corruption does not have a political affiliation. It has a greed affiliation. And and so I think that stuff's really important. And I think it's really important that there was an accepted level of what reality is. Not what you have to do, like, what you have to believe in, but what reality is. Like, it should not be, in my opinion, a viable opinion held by people. And Super Bowl might be fixed because Biden's got his hand on the scale. And I think right now, 1 in 20 people believe it, which sounds like not a lot. That's 5%. What's 5% of 330 million people? That'd be 7 million people are like, no, more than that. Sorry about that. It would be 17 million people are like, yeah, that's probably it. It's unfathomable to me.
Yeah. I was thinking about this. I saw the ratings for both the AFC and the NFC championship. Like 56 million people watched both.
Unbelievable.
And I was saying this. Cable
TV's back, baby. Yeah, TV's back.
So did I tell you my theory on this about everybody said cable's dead? But so if TikTok lost 40% of their audience, but it was only a platform for recipes, food videos, restaurant reviews, it would be an incredibly powerful, not weapon, platform for the culinary industry. So we always shared television with soap operas, sitcoms, dramas. We no longer share it. It is singularly ours. Cable TV is all sports and occasionally politics. So people say cable's dying. Fuck, it is. My ratings are up 40%. Yours are up 2,000%. It is now It is now singularly a platform for games, opinions on games. Stephen A's numbers are up. Yours are up. Mine are up. So this idea, everything's done. No, it's not. We don't share the platform anymore. And that's why I have 10 years left in this business. TV is going nowhere.
That's right. And by the way, if people are like, how can Nick's ratings be up so much? Guys, the key to great increases in ratings is start from a very small number. If you start from a small enough number, you can increase by massive percentages. So I think, listen, I think it was contracting. And then A, the contraction slowed a bit, and B, the people who stayed are our people. Yes. There are people that want news, information, sports, or they're just really old. You know what I mean? Like those people we probably weren't getting anyway. So I totally agree. Like if you were and the people who wanted sitcoms and dramas and miniseries, those people might have transferred. You know what I mean? Those people might have said, I'm going to just do Netflix and Prime and whatever. But the people that were into sports still are getting cable. You know, like, and they know how to get us. So I have been amazed at the NFL. The numbers this year, the conference championship games did 56 and 57 or whatever it was. The divisional round, Chiefs, Bills, two of the smaller markets. Yes. Some of Buffalo's audiences in Canada, that doesn't count, did 50 million people. 50 million.
Nick, I said this today on the air. Everything now in sports is niche. Everything except the NFL. And I do think because of college football's 12-team playoff, the ability to bet on football and its connection to the NFL, it will stay viable. It will remain viable. The NBA, though, hockey and baseball, MLS, are getting increasingly international. And the downside of that, the skill level's never been deeper and greater for all these sports, hockey, baseball, soccer in America, MLS, and the NBA. The skill's never been greater. But it is a harder ask for busy Americans to say, hey, do you follow the European leagues? You don't know these players. They usually go to bad teams. They don't make a playoff impact until year 3, 4, 5. People are busy. College football makes it so easy to follow the NFL. I watch Marvin Harrison with a Buckeyes crush, and then all of a sudden he shows up on the Arizona Cardinals. I'm just a huge fan.
People are going to have, and probably somewhat unfairly towards him in some regards, people are going to have strong opinions on Caleb Williams before he steps onto the field. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you're familiar with him. That never happens in college basketball. And I don't know if you saw it.
DraftKings, the leader in fantasy sports, just dropped a brand new fantasy game called Pick 6. It's the newest way for you to get in on fantasy football action with DraftKings Sportsbook. Just pick between 2 and 6 NFL players and predict if they're going to have more or less of a stat. For example, a player will have more or less than 100 rushing yards or more than 1 touchdown. Okay? Track your lineup, compete against others for a shot at a huge cash prize. Fantastic. DraftKings Sportsbook, official sports betting partner of the NFL. Sign up now. Takes 90 seconds. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. The code is Colin, C-O-L-I-N. The crown is yours.
A week ago, a women's college basketball game outrated an NBA game on
Celtics
at the same
Heat.
time. Yeah, a real NBA game, which is a testament to the women's college game right now is elite and with stars. The quality of play is super high because nobody's turning pro early, obviously, because you can make more money as a star college female player than you can. I shouldn't say more. You can make maybe equivalent money as in the WNBA. So you have cohesion, you have stars, you have all this stuff. But you know how much I love the NBA.
Right.
I am disappointed right now in the league and a little worried about the league.
Yeah, same.
So I'm disappointed in that Saturday should have been an amazing day in the NBA.
I had it written. I was like, oh, I want to watch that.
Yeah. Jokic, Embiid. And Embiid can't play. And then the nightcap, Steph LeBron. These two guys who are combined 75 years old.
Put on a show.
Okay, we'll keep doing what we've been doing for the last 10 years, which is carry this goddamn league on our two backs. These two guys.
Yeah.
And love and respect to them. It's unbelievable. You know, I've told you, I think Steph does not get enough credit for being as great as he is at 35 because LeBron is doing what he's doing at 39. So people think 35 is not that old when 35 is Jordan's last year with the Bulls is 35.
Right.
But I think the NBA, though, from a strategic perspective, has made a mistake, which is that Warriors-Lakers game, did almost 4 million people.
Yeah,
that's a real number for the NBA.
On a Saturday night. That's the night you take out your wife.
Yes,
you go out and hang out and party.
I think the NBA can't help themselves but to put those two guys and Kevin Durant front and center.
Yeah.
And I think it's a mistake. I think that I'll mix metaphors a bit. Let's say you told FS1, I'm gone in 2 years. You told them, I'm gone. And they looked at the numbers and they said, okay, Colin show's the strongest show. He's our biggest brand. He's all of it. And they put all of the marketing behind you because they're like, well, it gets the best numbers. It's this. Then the moment you leave,
right,
there's not they haven't built anything up. The NBA, in my opinion, should say, okay, Lakers Warriors will do the best number. But we can get 80% of the audience if we feature Anthony Edwards. And we need to start getting the public ready for when LeBron and Steph aren't there. And instead, the NBA just keeps riding these guys. And they got away with it because they did it with Jordan.
Yeah.
And they only got away with it because Shaq and Kobe, you know what I mean, came together and were there. There's no Shaq and Kobe right now. You're going to have to create Anthony Edwards, Tatum, you're going to have to make them stars. And to still put all your eggs in the LeBron, Steph, Durant basket from a ratings perspective, well, don't be disappointed then when LeBron and Steph's teams, one misses the playoffs and one is out in round one. And all of America's like, you want me to give a shit about Jokic against the Timberwolves? I don't. Like, they haven't primed the audience for that. And I think it's a mistake. I think it is a short-term thinking mistake by Adam Silver.
So I'll defend him. So the bottom line as a business owner is ultimately you need the revenue. And I need the revenue to hire new young people. And so the leagues are going to squeeze every last ounce out of Mahomes in 15 years. And there'll be other quarterbacks that come up. But if the other quarterbacks are great, they'll be able to start fresh, hot out of college and get popular. But the legacy is so imprinted with Brady and Tampa. You just had to put them on every week. Nobody, Jalen Hurts, not interested. Young Kyler Murray, not interested. We're going to at Fox. We're putting Brady on. We're squeezing every ounce of juice.
I think the NFL can do it because people will show up for the football. The NBA, they show up for the stars. And you've got to create them if they're not natural. That's what I'm saying. The NFL, I think, can do it. The NBA needs to teach the audience to care about Anthony Edwards. You've brought up, and you're right. They're in a weird spot already because all the best players are international guys.
But let me argue this. Doesn't the NBA get in trouble when it tries to teach people things? Black Lives Matter. We're going to teach you about things. Well, it turned off a lot of fans who go to sports to escape. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother you. But I've never thought I'm the audience. I think leagues get in trouble when they try to tell you, hey, we're going to teach you a few things about politics, about business. I think you just have to put the popular people on and just, it's not boxing where if you put an old fighter on, you worry about his mental health and what are you doing to his brain. It's like Steph and LeBron are still, by the way, they're both still insanely good.
Yeah, listen, you and I, this is one we might just not even be able to, we're not going to agree on, because I would take on this. I agree with you. If you're trying, I don't want to learn my civics or political lessons from my sports leagues. It was stupid to begin with. Even if I think for a lot of these guys, the message was right or their heart was in the right place.
That's right.
I think they can take a page out of the book of wrestling. Wrestling creates stars. You know, like they just say, this guy is going to be a star and our audience is going to know it because he's going to headline WrestleMania, because we're going to put him last on Raw, because we are going to make it. And for a guy we decide is going to be a star, for him not to end up being a star, he's going to really have to screw this up because we are pushing it. I think that I don't think you can turn a nothing player, average or just fringe also. Let me put it like this. I don't think they could trick America and being like, listen, and Knick fans are going to get mad at me, Jalen Brunson's the new face of the league. You can't make the 17th best player to be like, he's taking the torch from LeBron. I understand that. But you can pinpoint a few guys and be like, we are going to market Luka, Giannis, Anthony Edwards, and Jayson Tatum. And we are occasionally going to take 1.8 million people watching a Celtics Mavs game over 2.2 million people watching a Warriors Suns game. Because those people that are going to be playing for the next 10 years, and Steph and Durant aren't. So I just think that would be the longer term better decision, because I don't think they have a post LeBron plan. I don't think they do.
Yeah, well, they struggled with David Stern to have a post Jordan plan.
And Shaq and Kobe saved it. It was, you know what I mean? Like Shaq and Kobe saved it. Go ahead.
So you keep lists on the NBA. I have always been not lukewarm. I don't want to be marginalized. I've always been, I like Jayson Tatum, but he sort of lacks a Kobe,
we talked
MJ.
About this last time. Yes.
Yeah. It just kind of lacks something. But I can acknowledge I like him a lot. I'd love to have him on a team. He's a one. I'm not denying that.
Yes.
I'm not sure he's a championship one. So I want to ask you, our domestic players, and I think a lot of this has been coming over 30 years due to AAU. I don't think it makes better players. I think it sells better players. It heightens their hype and awareness of players. Jalen Green's a great talent. Nobody knows who he is. It's the AAU. Guys don't go to, had he gone to Duke for 2 years, you know who he is because we watched March Madness. Sure. So I like the college route for marketing, not the academic side, the marketing for the kids. But right now, domestic players, there's not many great ones. There's a lot of good ones. I want you to rank where Jayson Tatum is, and I'm talking game 7. Pick your star. Right. Okay, so who do you go with?
All right, hold on. Are you saying I'm pulling up right now just the NBA standings because that helps me orient the players?
I'm talking about it's a game 7. This is how I judge great players.
Of course. Who would you want in a critical spot in a playoff series? Yeah. Okay. And you're saying only American or the whole league?
Everybody. I want to see where Tatum ranks for you.
Okay. All right. Guys I would have ahead of him. Giannis, no doubt. It's very interesting because Embiid throughout in every situation except for the one you just said. Embiid, I don't know about him. You know what I mean? Like in a game 7 spot. But Embiid's, he's 35 a game. Put an asterisk next to him. No one on the Knicks, not Brunson. No one on the Cavs, not Donovan. Put Halliburton he's not there yet. He's close. Jimmy Butler, yes. Jimmy Butler is ahead of him in these circumstances. Sorry.
Game 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm at 8 before I get to him. I'm at 8 right now.
Okay, so I'm just going down the list. Hold on. Are you writing down who I say or no?
No, I'm going to give you mine, but you go. I'm going to tell you.
Okay, that's fine.
So in no order.
No order. I've said Giannis for sure, Jimmy Butler, no one on Orlando, no one on Chicago, no one on Brooklyn, Atlanta. Okay. Minnesota, I don't know about Anthony Edwards. I mean, he's very, very close. He's a maybe. Oklahoma City, Jokic, yes. If he's healthy, Kawhi, yes. Like, again, if we're assuming health. OKC,
I'm going to jump in. I'm going to tell you right now. Game 7. And some of this is unproven, but it's the way I feel about their game.
Okay.
2 minutes left. I take Jokic, Luka, Giannis, SGA, KD, Kawhi, LeBron, Steph, Jimmy Butler in a game 7. That is 9 players over him. I'm at 10, and now we can argue. I don't even think those are arguments. I trust SGA, 2 minutes left to make a shot.
So and again, Tatum is at this point better than LeBron over the course of an entire season.
That's right.
But if I get him in that part, I totally agree with you. The only one I can't go with you on yet is SGA, because he now benefits from the fact that we've never seen him in those spots, so we don't know if he'd be bad in it. Like, SGA right now is first team All-NBA.
Oh, yeah.
And Tatum is not. It's going to be probably not.
SGA is a pure scorer. He's not as good, but as a pure.
And it's not as big. I agree with all that. I just need to see him it's the same reason I couldn't put Anthony Edwards there, because I got to see him in the spot before it. But yeah, so that is, and that is why, and we talked about this last time, that is why people get mad. But for Tatum needs the exact team he has, which is a great supporting cast, because in every meaningful playoff series he plays, the other team's going to have the better number one. Like, you know what I mean? Against the Heat, against the Bucks, maybe not against the Sixers, just because Embiid hasn't proven it in the playoffs yet. And anyone out west that makes it to the finals, pardon me, the other team's going to have the bet. And again, that's not an indictment. It's just reality of how the NBA works, which is why he needs to have the better 2, 3, 4, 5, which he very well may. That Celtics seems damn good, but it's going to have to be in the model of, as we've talked about, the 04 Pistons, kind of the model of the 08 Celtics, where it's the collection of all of the talent around it to overcome the superstar.
Right. Let's end on something fun. So,
can I ask you before we end real quick, just because you said lists and it got my brain going?
Yeah.
Right now, this moment is, and I have to ask you a Mahomes question before we end. Is Mahomes, in your opinion, a top 2 all-time quarterback?
Yes. So that's interesting. You just found our final topic. So
okay.
I have no problem separating raw talent from productivity. I don't think Bill Russell's nearly as good as Kareem was or as dominating as Shaq. But he was more productive. I can separate those two. I think most fans can. You certainly can. Where Mahomes, I think Marino is one of the most gifted throwers, if not the most gifted thrower. I watched his prime. He was a machine. Big, strong, fast, quick. He was like Aaron Rodgers with more size, more of a power arm. I mean, he was better than Elway at just throwing a ball, and Elway was great. Marino, I've never seen anything like Elway. Think if Aaron Rodgers he was bigger and more natural, and no JC. He was the best high schooler, the best college guy. He just had those rumors that hurt him in the draft. But he wasn't productive like a Brady or a Manning. So what you're seeing with Mahomes now is the most naturally gifted player, including Marino. He's the most naturally gifted.
Yep.
And now
the production is insane.
It's insane.
And
I pushed back early when Tom beat him a couple times. I'm like, let's slow down. Okay, now he's stacking chips. He's poker.
Stacking everything.
You have to win a couple World Series of pokers. You know, you could be the bigger brain. Let's say you're an academic and you're beating the late Doyle Brunson, and who's a smart guy, but you're like viewed as this Elon Musky smart guy. But you can never win the World Series of poker. You win 6 out of 7, okay, then you're the greatest.
So listen, Mahomes, just on the accomplishments route, I look at it like a marathon. And if you ever look at the Olympics, if you're watching someone run the 1,600 meters, after one lap, they tell you, are they on world record pace?
Right. Yeah.
No one can be like, oh, hadn't done it yet. It's like, well, the race ain't over. All we can do is judge the pace. Right. So Brady, we did this on the show today, 22 seasons as a starter, because you take out both of their rookie years, because luckily both of them didn't play the rookie years. 22 seasons as a starter, 7 Super Bowls, which is bananas. That's 32%. 10 Super Bowl appearances, that's 45%. 14 conference championship games, that's 64%. Mahomes, as of this moment, 2 Super Bowls in 6 years, that's 33%, just ahead of Brady. 4 Super Bowl appearances in 6 years, that's 67%, way ahead of Brady. And 6 for 6 on conference championship games, that's 100%, that's way ahead. If he wins in 2 weeks, now he's 50% of his years as a starter, he's won the Super Bowl. 67% he's been there. And the other 2 years, he lost in overtime the round before. So the production, he is on pace to shatter everybody's. The numbers, he's on pace to shatter everybody's. So this is where so you said I like lists. So this is my quarterback lists. And it is kind of a rich tapestry of raw talent, accomplishments, eye test, all of it. Brady is 1 for now. Mahomes is 2. Peyton Manning is 3. Joe Montana 4. Elway Marino is really hard, 5, 6, 6, 5, because Elway went to 5 Super Bowls, has more MVPs, has more rings, and I kind of feel like, but Marino was better. Like, I know that sounds shitty, but, and then rounding it out of guys like what I would call modern era. So like post Bradshaw, Staubach, post that is Rodgers, Brett, and the guy who I think is the most underrated of all time, and Steve Young.
Yes, he is.
Young was the closest thing to Mahomes before Mahomes, as far as the creativity, athleticism, crazy. So like, I think if Mahomes, like, I'm ready to say Mahomes is better than Peyton Manning. Like, I have him ahead. And Peyton won 5 MVPs. And I think he can run down Tom. I don't think Tom did something interesting, because Tom was on with you. He did a couple of interviews today. And in one of them, he was asked about Mahomes. And Tom said, was talking about how great he is and all these things. And then he was like, listen, man, because he was asked about someone else being the GOAT. And he said at the end, it was so slick. He was like, listen, if anyone can get to 7 Super Bowls, like, I want to shake their hand, because I know, like, he made it very clear. Oh yeah, someone else can be the GOAT. They better get 7 fucking rings though, because I don't want to hear nothing about someone, because he knows 7's going to be hard. But and so he's like, that's the standard. Just to be clear, get to 7 and we can talk. But I don't think you have to get to 7. Like, the point I always make, forget Russell. Michael Jordan retired the first time. Retired in 1993. Had 3 rings. Magic was still playing at that time, had 5. Kareem had just retired, had 6. You know what they put on Michael's statue? The greatest there ever was, the greatest there ever will be. They weren't counting rings then. They were like, no, we saw him. He's better than everybody. He's the best. Nobody ever started, by the way, counting rings until Michael got the most. And then people were like, oh, we got to count the rings. And he's still, kind of the most. And so Brady does have, it's not like Brady doesn't have eye test stuff. Brady is as great of a leader, clutch, all of it.
By the way, throws as good a bad weather ball as I've ever seen.
Super important.
And the AFC, weather stuff. All the great organizations are north.
Right. Yeah, exactly right. And so all that matters. So I'm not trying to discount Tom at all, but Patrick's got a path here. If they can win, they traded away Tyreek Hill and said, we're taking the long view of it.
Yes, it was right.
Build a defense. We have the second, this year the Chiefs have the second youngest defense in football. if the first 2 years without Tyreek Hill, they peel both rings, then all of a sudden you're back ahead of the pace. And people throw the 2-0 at me all the time. He was 2-0. Listen, the Super Bowl's the Super Bowl. Tampa kicked Mahomes' ass. Everybody go rewatch the 2018 AFC title game. That's one of the 2 wins. And tell me who played better that game. Like, you can't hold that one against Patrick.
Brady got rings before and after Randy Moss. I've made this argument. The dominating star receiver is actually not good for titles. You can win, but it becomes very important. The receiver wants to be fed. The quarterback wants to feed him. You start calling the game to appease or appeal the star. Is that the truth is, what always made Grady good, he always had 2. It was Gronk, and then Edelman. It was Welker, and then Moss. So he did, and by the way, James White.
Yeah.
Brady had, Edelman goes down as one of the great playoff guys ever, but it was never an Edelman
He's
thing.
Great on your show, by the way.
He's fantastic.
Hold on, go ahead, finish.
But it's interesting. It shouldn't be lost that I can argue Tyreek Hill was terrific, but not having him allows you to have dimensions defensively that you wouldn't have, and it also allows you to be less predictable.
So 2 things. One is, do me a favor, and I never ask you to do this, but the next time Edelman's off the air, tell him, please, Nick Wright says, I love your spots with Colin, and I would like a truce. Years ago, he's one of the many people that in my maybe feistier days, I talked a little online shit to, and he talked shit back to me. And now I'm like, gosh darn it, we're colleagues. I think he's probably like, that guy's an asshole. So if you can maybe vouch, I'm not that bad of a guy. At the very least, tell him that I think he does awesome. I love his spots with you. I love it. I think he does a great job. So here is, in the 10 days we have of content between now and the Super Bowl, I talked about this today. It is you putting your brain on this, I think, would create days of stuff. The last pass Mahomes ever threw to Tyreek is one of the most fascinating moments now that we can look back on it. So it's also the last time he threw an interception in the NFL playoffs. It's also the end of the only bad game of his whole playoff career. It was in overtime to Cincinnati. They had a dominating lead. If you remember, Patrick screwed up before the half, tried to get a touchdown and threw it short of the end zone. They didn't get a field goal, but no one cared because it was 21-3 or something close to that. And then they lost. And Patrick fumbled, threw a pick. They go to overtime. And on 3rd and 10, he throws a perfect bomb to Tyreek, hits Tyreek in the hands, but it's double covered and it's 40 yards downfield. Even though it's a perfect pass, Tyreek doesn't quite get it, hits him in the face mask. Bounce, caught, Cincinnati, 4 plays later, field goal, and the Chiefs lose.
Yeah.
Since that moment, Patrick stopped taking sacks in the playoffs and has not thrown a single pick. All-time NFL record for longest stretch. That moment, and also, while his passer rating has stayed the same, his yards per game have dropped by 70 from up to that moment to right now. And you saw it in the second half against Baltimore. Baltimore's got a great defense, and they did some good things. But the other thing that happened was the Chiefs were up 10 points. And Patrick said, you know what? If I don't turn the ball over, we can't lose.
Yeah.
And I am going to do something Tom did forever, which is manage the rest of this game to get us to the finish line. And I find it to be a fascinating fork in the road of my numbers aren't going to be as good. It's not going to be as flashy, might not be as fun, but they haven't lost in the playoffs since then. He has taken 5 sacks in 6 playoff games. 3 of them, he had a broken ankle, essentially.
Yeah.
2 of them were against the number 1 defense in the league. It hasn't mattered.
When you can't rely on something, it's almost like if you do well in life, how much money do you give your kids in their 20s, right? If the Chiefs can depend on that $3,700 a month check, you're incentivizing them to take the $3,700 check, de-incentivizing them. If you can throw a rainbow to Tyreek Hill, why read through your progressions? You take an extra second in the pocket waiting for the big play. You become innately less patient, more willing to sit in the pocket. Bad things happen for even Mahomes when you hold the ball a long time. So I think it's the classic. It feels good, but it doesn't necessarily make you a better quarterback. What makes a great quarterback is efficiency. Get rid of the ball. Multiple reads, mix it up. Don't be predictable. You can become, and I saw this with Dak and Dez Bryant. Dak was actually better when he had a little Zeke. You got a little left. Maybe it was Jason Witten. You got a little Amari Cooper. When you became and by the way, Dez would get into the end zone, but people know Dez demands the ball. So you kind of know big play. They're going to Dez. Well, what does a defense want? To know what you're doing. And that's why this Chiefs team's interesting, because we know where he's going with the ball. It's Travis Kelce, which is why the defense matters. Even in this game Sunday, they're not dropping 34 anymore in these games. That's not who they are. They are more predictable in this brief window. So they weren't last year, by the way. They were less predictable in the Super Bowl. This year, they've been a little offensively predictable.
So even though they're not, and we can leave it at this, here right now, and it won't, if next year the offense struggles again, this will wear off.
Yeah.
But right now, despite the fact they're not dropping 34, they still benefit from the fact that every team they play is terrified they will, and they fuck with themselves about it. The Bills, the third play of the game, Josh Allen's like, oh my God, if we don't get this first down, we are screwed. He's throwing a lateral 10 yards past the line of scrimmage because, and in the fourth quarter, it's a 3-point game in the fourth quarter. They're fine. Sean McDermott's like, fake punt, got to do something because Mahomes on the other side. The Ravens were never down more than 10. And they abandoned the run immediately because I think in part because they're like, oh my God, we're playing Patrick Mahomes. Like, even though they're not scoring that, they instill this fear that gets the other team out of what they normally would do because they think that the Chiefs could at any point drop 30 on them, even though they haven't done it throughout the whole year. It's unbelievable.
You know, it's the legacy of greatness. They terrify people without actually doing what they used to do.
Yes.
They're in everybody's head. You can see it with Buffalo. You can see their game plan. They didn't want to throw the ball down the field. They wanted to control the clock, so they didn't give it back to Mahomes.
Exactly right.
He averaged 17 a game over like a 9-game stretch. I mean, but to your point. Okay.
That's what happened.
This was
all right.
An hour.
Next, listen, I don't think I'm available in a week, which is going to be great because it means the next time we talk will be, right after we've won another championship in Kansas City, the new title town, and we can really talk dynasty and all that stuff. And then we turn our attention to the NBA. It'll be great. Maybe I'll have an even better lighting setup. I don't know. I think this one was good.
I love the pennants. And
look, that's the original Dream Team. Oh, this camera moves with me. I can't even move it. That's the original Dream Team, and that's Satchel Paige in the Kansas City Monarchs.
Who's running your camera? China? What's going on?
No, I'll be honest. I don't know. I can't believe it moved when I moved, which means there's some artificial intelligence thing going on here, which is I didn't sign up for. I think I was probably a mole in my house now. Yeah.
I've been living on artificial intelligence my entire career.
You know what? That's what they always say. I'll talk to you soon. See you, Colin.
All right. See you, buddy.